Good morning, everyone. Hope you're well. Welcome to my weekend stream. Hello to the fellow Melburnians out there. Let me know if I'm coming in loud and clear and you can see me. Everything looks good on my end. As always, discussing the topic of the day, which is self-sabotaging. Are you too pessimistic? Now, I'm not talking about being rationally skeptical. I have a lot of respect for a person when you talk to them and they're, in a mature sense, nominally skeptical in a realistic way. They realize that most things in life that are worth doing require effort, require some form of calculated risk, not recklessness. I'm assuming that people who have watched a few of my videos and know where I'm coming from, I don't really believe there are any kind of perfect answers. All it comes down to is kind of assessing what's in front of you and making the best choice. So when I pose this topic for today's stream, let me put my goggles on. It's not whether I'm too pessimistic or overly pessimistic about others, the people in the world. Of course, the world is a lot worse in a lot of ways socially, cooperatively. People lying, the world is very, very opportunistic socially, and like lies are rewarded. The worst kind of behavior is rewarded. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about yourself. Has the world, in a sense, worn you down that to a degree where you don't even trust your own ability for making your own life better? The voice out there, the demoralizing voice out there of society and the dating world and everything lying to you and walking all over you, has that kind of bled into your own internal dialogue, and you've become demoralized and you've given up on your own little sort of will and adventures and getting up and going for a walk and doing things? Are you driven by less and less because you're so externally driven? So it's more, I'm asking whether your natural reflex has either A, been worn down by the world, but also, do you naturally want to fight to live, or are you just so nihilistic and depressed at the world that you think that the best position is to be stubbornly pessimistic because it's consistent in a way? It's comfortable. You wake up and you feel the same way and the world hasn't changed. It's just gotten worse and you feel more right than you did yesterday because, I've picked the right position. So, but I'm pretty sure people who follow me know what I'm talking about. So it's a difference for me. I've been the kind of person, yes, if there's shark-infested waters, you don't go swimming through that, of course. But if there's a big, strong steel bridge over it to get across to the other side, or if there's a very stable boat that everyone's using, that other people use over and over again, and they get across the shark-infested waters just fine, but you're the kind of person that says, well, because the waters aren't clear of any sharks, because there are sharks there, there is a small chance something could go wrong. By that token, none of us would get on the freeway because there is a non-trivial chance of accidents occurring on the road, given how people are on their mobile phones, never looking. I have to be very, very careful how I drive now. The amount, I'd say, through the week, I'd say between 3 to 8 times a week, I've got to really pay attention to other people's stupidity. But if I go in blindly, without looking at my own skill and awareness of how I'm driving, I would get into accidents all the time. Just 2 days ago, I was going through a roundabout, and I'm always, even though I've got the right of way, I'm going carefully and with my foot just ready on the brake because some idiot won't pay attention. They're on their phone and they're just going straight through. And it happens all the time. If I wanted it to be perfect, I wouldn't drive. I wouldn't get on the road, because there's a non-trivial chance of getting into accidents because of the way everyone conducts themselves. But if I go driving and try my best to conduct myself with skill, yes, I can still get into an accident. It's not foolproof. But it's all about the skill in which you go about life, and the way you stubbornly refuse to kind of be a bit more realistic about things. Watch my latest video I uploaded last night about, what's the name of it? I can't even remember the name of the video. But yeah, thinking that all relationships are as hard as taking a full court shot on a basketball court. You know, worrying about failing. Like, unless it's perfect, you're not even going to try, because there is a small to non-trivial chance of failing. But you fail to recognize that if you approach it with intent, with skill, calculated risks, with your eyes open, you're not on autopilot, you're not led predominantly by your hormones on a date, that you've got the best chance of getting good results. Nothing's guaranteed, but the more skillful you are. I mean, look at how hard it is to start a business and how many businesses fail. They say 95% of businesses fail within their first 6 months to a year, yet everyone's driven to do it because they're optimistic that if they can kind of control the way they conduct themselves in it, they've got a really good chance of fulfilling a dream or a passion or something. They're really optimistic in a realistic way. But it's not to say, well, there's a small chance of failure. It's not perfect. I'm not even going to bother trying. And this is a thing I find disappointing, especially talking to guys about dating, and like, there's such a childish discussion going on that if things aren't perfect, I'm not even going to try. And for our own good, individually, I'm not telling you what to do. Don't date. I really don't care. I really don't care about you really being frustrated by women and you lock yourself in a cage and you're screaming at them from sort of that vault. No one cares. You are wasting your time and energy. Like, if you really don't want to have anything to do with women, fine. I respect your decision, but I know that I've always had a more moderate frustration with women, but I always wanted to try and make it work. I liked the moments I was in relationships when it was working well, where I was switched on, and then I was trying to do the right thing. I never had a problem being on my own, but I could not lie to myself that I didn't find the drive towards finding my kind of person still there. It wasn't dead. I had given up the chase, but I was still open to it. So, the black and white thinking I'm not a big fan of at all. There are some black and white things, relatively speaking. The sun will come up and the sun will go down, and it's cold in winter and it's hot in summer, things like that. Yes, you can point to exceptions. I don't care. I don't think we can have a general discussion where we can see and converse in life in the same way unless we generalize workable things, general perspectives, things that are generally true. For instance, if all things being equal, if you have a more positive and optimistic outlook, if you do have that outlook, you'll have a better quality of life. Now, I'm not saying to be naive again. You'll get the nihilistic, lazy spurgs online who point to every little imperfection in life as proof that you shouldn't even try because, oh, look, there in the corner, there's a small little defect. You could have a beautiful car. Oh, look, there's a little tiny scuff mark, a little splotch of mud on the front bumper. Not a perfect car. What's the point? This kind of clever academic, mathematical, insistence on things being perfect. And because you've got this standard of perfection, that is why you're smarter than the rest of everyone else. There's a quote by Elon Musk that I recall that says, "I'd rather be an optimist and wrong than a pessimist and right." And of course, the Spurgs out there will say, "Well, look at him. He's had a lot of not illegitimate kids, but his relationship life is terrible." But it's kind of like, really, are you only gonna point to your perfect Marcus Aureliuses in the past that you barely know anything about, or are you gonna, in a more balanced way, look at people that try and fail and try and fail and try and fail a lot of times, and then they succeed in a way that you never would have, or most of us never would have, lest they weren't as stubbornly determined to be interested in that part of their lives, that they got the victories that none of us would. We can't rely on the full court basketball shot to get relationships in. We have to be there at the foul line practicing our little free throws and layups and getting very good at those mechanics. And then the more difficult shots become easier than they would because we're more practiced at them. A lot of this stuff that you see, a lot of the debates with microphones in podcasts on the popular self-help dating channels that everyone tends to watch, where everyone's screaming at each other, that reality-based crap. Everyone's wanting to be safe and perfect and finding the perfect answers, and then they think that they'll go out there with that map, and then they'll be able to find that lost treasure with these perfect maps everyone's drawing on podcasts and all of their discussions. There are no perfect answers, and even if there were, you would get all these people that are conditioned to just keep talking and talking and talking without actually acting in the world and trying some of these theories out about men and women and dating and courage and taking a little bit of a calculated risk. Even if you were, okay, I've eliminated every little scrap of fear, this is the way to get relationships and women, and everyone has to abide by these rules, and this is the way to do it, people would still find an excuse not to do it. Oh, I was diagnosed with blah, 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 and my childhood, and you don't know how I feel, and it's easy for you. It's like, I don't care. I've lost so much patience with childish excuses. It was one of the reasons that I kind of dropped the MGTOW moniker, because at the start you were talking with adults having balanced, mature conversations about, well, I believe this, I slightly disagree with you. Now, I still have those discussions on Discords with the few friends I talk to, where we're very different people, but we know who we think we are, and we can have a live and let live discussion with other people. We don't have to be perfect. We're not looking for perfect answers. We have a laugh at the friction that happens with trying to find, your blueprint and trying to find your own ethics by which you can go out into the world and have a better life with people and without people. So I'm not offering you perfect answers, gentlemen and ladies. I'm offering you more sensible ways to conduct yourself and ways to, be aware of like the more calculated risks you need to take to get things that the sleepwalking people today that are led by this terrible society won't get, unless you consciously take more calculated risks to enjoy your life and curate what's the word? To curate the hygiene of your life, to be aware of the conversations you're having, your yeses and your nos, rather than everyone agreeing on blueprints and somehow we think they're going to be plugged into society. And then all of a sudden, magically, when the laws are fixed, women are going to treat men nice, and governments will be fair, and we'll have this utopia with unicorns and rainbows, rather than, if you want some of those unicorns and rainbows, and I'm not talking in an exaggerated sense, I'm just talking about contentment and, bouts of happiness throughout your life through the consistency of like more rational reasonable risks that you take in your day-to-day and how you speak and think, and you have the courage to say what you want, and you have your boundaries with people, and you're respectful, and you don't ask for so much more than what you're prepared to give, like a lot of people out there. I'm talking about being that kind of person. And if you look under the comment section of my recent videos and this question I posed today, you'll get the knee-jerk reactions of, yeah, but what about the little imperfection? Or what about the world? Nothing's perfect. Of course it's not. You aren't either. It's amazing how much of us think we're perfect and it's the fault of the world. Like, I'm 100% great, or I would come to the table being 100% great if you idiots would lift your game. That's true, but just try having a conversation with most people. Anyway, I'm ranting. Let me pop out the stream. Anyway, you got a good rant, all right? I didn't even get to pop out the stream yet. Okay, let me pop it out. If you would like to ask me a question, if you're here live in the stream, if you're one of these nice people, subscribers, and you would like to ask me a question or share a relevant, civil, not childish comment that can be shared, and then I can talk about and, say good for you. I love people that contribute to this kind of mature discussion rather than the reality TV hateful pointing at everything that's wrong with the world discussion that is so popular. You know what I noticed? I'm finding it harder and harder to make videos that I enjoy because I no longer want to just complain about everything. I'm struggling more and more. I find these conversations, these streams easier because I'm just having a general conversation with you, but trying to make meaningful content, good content, not naively optimistic content, but it's so easy to say, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like this is wrong, I don't like that, look at how that person's acting badly. It is so easy to make content that is negative or what you don't want. It is much harder to make interesting, entertaining, conversational. Let's think about this. Yeah, I'm not here with all the answers, but yet make it a very sharp point of view. It's become more and more difficult. The looser grip I'm having on certainty and trying to have the answers, but trying to talk about what each of our answers in terms of ethics could be. So anyway. Let's Schlitz Maltz Liquor, thank you very much for your super chat. I appreciate it. If you would like to ask me a question, put 3 yellow emojis before your question if you're here live, or super chat me and I'll see it. Just like let's see. Just like Schlitz Maltz Liquor here. Thank you very much, Schlitz. He's a long-time subscriber and watcher. I appreciate your comment. And also, Tom, thank you very much for your super chat. Tom says, things are never perfect. Thing is, many of us who aren't dealing with women can't see how we're missing some grand opportunity. Women are fine and not all bad, just not a good way to spend my time. I agree. I've generally speaking, look, you are demonstrably incompatible with most people out there, even as friends. But I think as friends, you can spend a little bit of time around people that you're not compatible with, but you're civil and polite enough to spend a couple of hours around each other. You go on forums, on Discord servers and so forth, but you couldn't spend all day there. I was talking with Boffin and Kari yesterday. The difference between them and some people I generally can hang out with is that I can hang out with them all day. They would actually be friends I'd catch up with in real life. We can just hang out with each other and do our own thing and talk from time to time. There are no uncomfortable silences and there's no awkwardness. But I think mostly with friends or lovers, we are vastly, vastly incompatible with everyone out there. The trick is, and the rareness, the unicorn is to actually come across someone you're comfortably and organically compatible with. That is very hard, and that is virtually all luck. It's whoever crosses your path. But if you're kind of like a absoluteless, extreme religious kind of perspective of life and science, where everything needs to be black and white and perfect according to the scripture of you, you are not going to find anyone. Because if other people are very black and white and stubborn like you, the chances of finding someone exactly as stubborn as you means that you are looking for a mirror. As Stanislaw Lem so famously said, most people who are out there saying that they're into the adventure of life, you are not looking for other people. You are not looking for other worlds. You're looking for mirrors. That's why I think so many people are comfortable with themselves online. They are pretending to be after relationships, but they are after mirror stimulations of themselves. And it's very easy to fool yourself because you're just sitting there pretending to have conversations with other people where they are other people. Like, I see you here, but you are really just comfortable with having interpretations through your own head. You are only socializing with your own brain insofar as it interprets other people's responses. I've talked to other content creators where they're baffled where they make a video and someone who watches it has a completely different interpretation of it. And you often wonder, what were you watching? Like, I never said anything that you're inferring. I never said those words. I never leaned in that direction. So people will see what they want to see. You play the music you want to play and people will hear what they want to hear. The trick is that you want to get someone who actually knows how to listen, who hears and sees what you're intending, but also who likes hearing what you like hearing too. It's very difficult. But I agree, most women, and for that matter, I'm imagining from women's point of view, most people out there are just incompatible train wrecks. It's just very hard. And we're trying to force square pegs into round holes. Apologies, Peg. But when you really, as was actually mentioned in a really nice comment that I'll share with you soon, when you really get to the point where you shut the door on the craziness of the world and trying to make people understand and trying to make pretty dates into relationships and lying to each other, when you stop that and you close the door on that, but you don't lock it, only certain keys open the door, because that personality will come in. And by the key, I mean that you'll recognize that person in conversation because you're talking that way with yourself. I recognize that when I started to talk this way, when I was paying attention to what I'm doing now and what my routines are and the relationships I'm having and the ones that I'm not having, the ones that I'm not choosing, the dates that I don't go out on, no matter how attractive they look on the surface, no matter how attractive donuts are at the supermarket, you willingly and soberly pick the better choice because you know it's good for you. You know that after you eat something that on the scale of 1 to 10 is a 7 in excitement, but gives your life the ambience of a 10 or a 9 long term, that's what you want. And you know that's what you want. But in the moment, your animal drive and your impulses just want what they want. Your addictions want what they want. And we spend too much of our time justifying our addictions. All these very clever scientific discussions on life about society and human nature and stuff, it's all well and good and a good objective understanding of the world. But when it comes to relationships and the choices you make in your personal life, it's all very subjective. You take note of the objective, but what you subjectively want matters much more. So I don't, like, for instance, when it comes to my personal life, what I choose, the way I started to date, the kind of women I knew were good for me, had very, very, very little to do with biology, reproduction, the family unit, the blah-de-blah. Like, who cares? That is good when everyone's a stranger. When I decide to go on a date and a woman becomes Jane, I keep repeating this, when the abstract becomes specific, becomes the girl in front of you, the life you're living, You can choose a lot of things that are abstract. There are a lot of women out there, but when you try and make it a specific woman, when you try and make it Jane or Mary or whoever, and it's the same way, you need to be Bill, Bob, or John. You can't be a high-value man. You need to be a self-respecting John, a self-respecting Frank. Like, you need to stand on your own 2 feet and be this lucid, like life-grabbing person in conversation and what you do from day to day and week to week. That's what I want to encourage all of us to think about. Again, you can do what you want. I don't care. TJ says, I don't know. At some point, it just isn't worth it. Frustration, heartbreak, and lies of the psychosis, only so much a person can take. I agree. If you've tried everything, like I got to the point where I thought I tried everything, and I did. I deleted. I didn't just sign out or pause my dating profile. I deleted, unsubscribed, deleted the apps, deleted permanently my profile pictures off my hard drive. I intentionally made that thing my past because I didn't just say it was over. It was. I made a choice for something better. I knew that I was leaving this place and there was no coming back. I wasn't fooling myself like I'm leaving, but I can always hop back on a boat and sail back to the land of Tinder and dating. Like, no, I made a decision and I closed that door. Again, never say never. Never be absolute. But be realistic. I still enjoy good conversations. I still enjoyed the moments at the beginning where, for the first year when things were good, they were good. I enjoyed that. However, even if it didn't last, or it wasn't as real as I hoped it would last, it was in that moment when I was being honest and talking and open. Even if they were faking it, it's not my problem. I was enjoying the relationship while I thought it was real, and I was expressing myself and talking and giving my yeses and my nos. If it ended up failing and she was faking it, how am I supposed to control that? All I can do is make sure I'm conducting myself well, and any red flags I see, I voice them and I don't let them slide. I don't let them slide for the relationship just to continue because I've invested so much. No, I want it to be real or it's ending. If we can't fix it, then both of us need to live an honest life. Thank you, Disco Cobra. Again, if you would like to guarantee me reading or seeing your question or comment, super chat me if you're here during the live stream. Otherwise, add 3 emojis like this, yellow circles or emojis if you're here. But thank you again, Disco Cobra, for your super chat. He says, hey, human, just curious, if you think that the sexual marketplace will ever go back to some form of normalcy, seems like third wave feminism destroyed dating. I think it's gotten a little bit better than it did pre, when the world froze a couple of years ago because of, So I think it's gotten marginally better. You see a lot more content of women pushing back on girl power and being a bit more sensible. So the conversations are a lot more sensible. They're not being censored by the algorithm and things like that. So I think it is better objectively when I look at it. The content out there is a bit more sane than it was a couple of years ago. But I don't want to coin a girl power phrase and say there's still a long way to go. But I think it's better. But again, being optimistic or pessimistic or whatever, I don't think we should actually care and wait for things to be fixed before we walk out into the sunshine. Given the way the world is now, make the best with what you've got. Really, just make the best with what you've got, guys. Hey, Karu. Hey, Peg. Boffin. Let me say hello to the regulars. Vero. Donna, how are you? Is Donna here? I don't know. Melee. Luke. Tom. Schlitz. Heg. Okay. No, I don't think she's here, but I asked Donna left a really good comment that someone who's a couple of generations older, see, these kind of very common everyday sayings get lost as generations go forward, and they discard the lessons of the past. When they discard that they need to talk to elders or have lessons imparted on them, or think they need mentors because they know everything, because we're living in a world of, online social media, and they're masters at this, and this is all the world is. And look at stupid grandpa, he doesn't even know how to work a phone, so why should I take advice from him about the world when the world is this? He's inept at this, so what has he got to teach me? Come on. Mute. Let me see. I asked the question. Let me first clear this. I asked, are you far too pessimistic for your own good? And by that, I mean, are you stubbornly pessimistic as a default with everything, as a defense mechanism, as a way to kind of push people away? Whether you know it or not, if you go on a date with a manosphere mindset or a girl power mindset or whatever, you are defensively projecting a lot before the person can get to know you. If you're switched on and you can see micro expressions and you can judge your own feeling about a person, someone that's very guarded and pessimistic and everything that comes out of their mouth is the world is shit, you are going to hold them at arm's length. Think about this. If you encounter a person that's so refreshingly optimistic and, yeah, I know the world's shit, but I don't care. Like, I want to have fun. Like, that person's infectious and good to be around, especially if they're optimistically realistic as well. They're not naive. They're not like a 5-year-old child thinking that every day is chocolate and unicorns. But they are saying that I refuse to be negative because I'm only here for a short amount of time. They are classically philosophical about things. When you read the Stoics, gentlemen, I'm sure that they're not like nihilistically depressive and pessimistic. They are skeptically healthy and vastly optimistic. You read the Stoics, guys, that everyone so popularly quotes. They are optimistically skeptical, but always leaning to bettering their lives and having a better perspective by which they can have a better quality of life. Life may be a struggle in a lot of ways, but at least I can see it. Yeah, I can see that signpost. I can see the landmine. Now I can still, make my way through life instead of blindly just going forward and getting destroyed. So I asked this, are you far too pessimistic? And I even added a poll, and I wanted to see what people said. Most people said pessimism. I probably should have added skepticism, but I was surprised. If I had to pick one, mostly I choose to be optimistic. I have a very healthy degree of skepticism. When something doesn't sound right, I need to challenge it through conversation and question and dialogue, right? So that's where my skepticism comes in, or if you want, my pessimism. But it's a healthy dose. But I lead, and I think if I'm left to my biology, it's very easy to be led by pessimism because of your safety response. But I'm, as much as possible, exercising the prefrontal cortex of rational optimism because of how I choose to conduct myself. I always want to exercise that muscle, because if you don't, it atrophies and you revert back to the natural default of safety, pessimism, stasis, things like that. That's why a lot of people don't have abs. That's why a lot of people are fat, give up, nihilistic, things like that. It's just the natural human default. And through this question I asked, and I got a few interesting comments. Donna, her comment that I wanted to read, she said, I answered optimistic. I've always, spelling error, optimism. I've always lived by this simple rule my grandmother told me I was lucky enough to have for 24 years. Hope for the best and plan for the worst. This here is actually a saying that's been lost. Hope for the best and plan for the worst. She continues, and she lived through 2 world wars, the Depression, married women being allowed in the workforce in 1948 in Australia, losing a husband a year after he retired for herself, to live another 37 years to be 101 without dementia. And a lot of these negative spurgs online in the comment section, well, that's luck. It's like, yeah, but with her positive outlook, what quality 101 years did she have compared to you sniveling 5-year-old, you blaming McDonald's 5-year-old, I'm a victim 5-year-old. Like, what is the quality of your life going to be like if you're reflexively negative compared to reflexively optimistic? Again, I'm not saying be naive, but I'm saying take calculated risks. And if you don't talk encouragingly and rationally optimistic about you and your life and waking up tomorrow and looking forward to things and having a better attitude about the difficulties that, come your way naturally through life, what kind of life will you have? You'll generate a largely negative life. Optimistically, if I'm that way, I will generally, all things being equal, statistically speaking, I will have a better quality of life, mentally speaking. Now, you scientific nihilists that are very clever, and I understand, like someone who's very, very mathematically clever about pointing out the cracks and the chinks and the dangers, it's very easy to sort of word salad your way. Like I can word salad myself. I can cleverly talk myself into a position, but I have to hold on very loosely to my my lexical cleverness here, and I have to take care of myself for the quality of my life, because that safety inclined survival intellect that talks in memes and talks in biology and the system and politics and the hopelessness of the world can really demoralize the will and self-esteem by which you can actually have better days going forward. So let's get back to the poll and this question. Which do you lean towards mostly? Optimism and pessimism. Vanez Art says, life is all about choice. Optimism makes me feel good, and I'm more productive when I feel good. That is much more important than a lot of very scientifically ontological guys are inclined to accept. And again, you cannot accept it. You can be a perfect scientific, philosophically, mathematically, scientific-minded person, what's his name? Like one of my favorites, Friedrich Nietzsche, and die alone talking to pigeons in your perfection. And I'm not trying to shame you, but there's a limit to a perfect intellect. And sometimes, yeah, they say, oh, the smarter you are, the more sigma intelligent you are, the higher your IQ, you're more alone. And then you kind of feel virtuous about being this lone wolf that no one understands and everyone's dumber than you. But what is the point if you can't meet at least more sane, stable people halfway? You might have a higher IQ, but you kind of push yourself more and more into Greenland, where there's nothing there except you and your perfection. Rant. Again, if you would like to ask me a question during this stream, ladies and gentlemen, super chat me. I will see it and read it, or add 3 brightly colored emojis like this, smiley faces, and I will read it out also. What does that mean? Humble Boy says, but the fact that humans are predictable makes one pessimistic, although they were optimistic at the beginning. As a child, I was an optimist. Now a pessimist after seeing life's realities. Let's not also forget what hardwiring is built into a human being. It's very hard for us to stop looking at patterns. As human beings, we survive by looking at patterns. That's why we're here. We're not the biggest, we're not the strongest, we don't have fur, we can't survive extreme climates. So we are pattern recognition addicted animals, and it serves us well to survive. But then also it's not accurate. If any chick objectively looked at my patterns, my videos, without being able to kind of know who she is and judge me by our personal conversation, you would look at the pattern of me in my life and stay away from me. I would look at the pattern of women generally and everything and stay away from everything. But when you make it personal, and then you have to be responsible for the personal perspective you take, you have to be responsible for the subjectivity of your empirical life and all the information you gather, and the science and the discussions you have and the bad jobs you've had and the bad experience. You have to filter it through your empirical experience, your personal life, and really see what you value, what you don't like, what you're comfortable with, whether you're an introvert, an extrovert, what fits with you. Those are the ethics and the empirical sums you need to make sense of. That's where you make sense and find your answers in your personal life. But mathematically trying to work things out, and human beings are like this. They're predictable. They are. But when you meet a person that you decide to try and trust over time, that pattern recognition is the thing you're focused on. When I started to care less and less about being so obsessed about the pattern recognition of the world, and more obsessed with the internal, very simplified pattern recognition of my discussions and the women I choose to date and not to date, and the time I choose to waste and not to waste. That pattern recognition, the very subjective, smaller world of mine and my words and my habits, and getting up early or late, and that pattern recognition, your pattern recognition of your world, that is more important. It's very easy to succumb to the bigger project of the world. When will the world be fixed? The pattern recognition of people, climate change, of whatever. You are screaming into space and your life is passing you by. I care so much more less about the world out there than I do about the hygiene of my life. I need to make my life well. I need to kind of lubricate. If I'm going to be concerned with perfection, that I'll never reach, by the way, the perfection needs to be focused on my life and my relationships with the people in my world. And then anything over that, the excess of that, gets spread out into the world where there's more and more people like us. I'm not saying we're anything special, by the way, but there's more and more sane people concerned with the fairness and the hygiene and the fair relating of each other in our own worlds. Then you extend that out into world. But instead of just pointing to like the problems of the world and we need to fix the world, we're all just a bunch of individual nobodies screaming about how the world should be fixed. You know what we're like? We are like the person watching football on TV screaming about, I wouldn't have missed that shot. You idiot, you moron. Why didn't you make that point? Why didn't you hit that goal? We are a couch psychologists. We are entertained. We are, what's the word? I can't even think about it. I'm too hyper. We are sports obsessed, beer drinking, pot-bellied idiots lying on the couch thinking we know how to fix things, and we're just watching sport. We're not playing it. When you decide to play the sport, then that's when it matters. Good coffee, by the way. Rod says, we understand nothing is perfect. With most women, this eliminates a loving relationship for the right reasons. Yes, Avoid most women. There you go. Pick simple rules by which you can calibrate your own decisions better. If you still get frustrated, but you can't help wanting to go on dates or be around women or feel their touch or go to bed with them or whatever, stop wanting the wrong women. Oh, but I can't. Biology. Stop wanting donuts. We know what the right thing to do is. It's not easy, but it's simple. You can't love women. Stop loving women. Love Jane. Oh, I can't stop the voice. Like, well, fuck. I get frustrated because I'm getting frustrated at my naivety as well years ago. So I'm not pointing fingers at anyone in particular. Yeah, Kyle says the space for modern discussion is shrinking. It is frustrating. Yeah, it's become a politically correct discussion now. There's no philosophical objectivity. There's no recognition that we're all individual people responsible for our own ethics and meeting each other halfway. And it's okay for someone to have a different opinion to you. And we celebrate the virtue of victimhood. How is anyone supposed to have the will to be better if you can just relax, cross your arms, and like just fall into the soft pillow of victimhood like everyone else? You don't have to try. Yeah, we're like victims don't have to try. They're like, oh, I've just lost patience. I was actually thinking the other day. It was on TV, the movie Grumpy Old Men. It's like, how come we never hear of grumpy old women? It's like, oh, well, women tend to be grumpy all the time from youth to old age because women are kind of nagging their partners and things like men only kind of have enough and they lose their patience and they become grumpy when they're old. But you don't hear of the cliche grumpy old women because, I think they nag generally and they're dissatisfied over a longer period in their lives that it's not particular to old women. Boffin, you've got a blue wrench as well, man. Mecca said, most men as kids, we listen to female teachers. As adults, we work under female managers. At home, bossed around by wives. Of course, men are docile. I was having this discussion the other day. All the girl powers chicks are sort of saying, oh, well, it's men's fault. Men need to do more. Men created this world. It's like a lot of men don't even see a father figure or a mentor as in terms of an adult until they're a teenager. I remember hearing Stefan Molyneux say, how is it men's fault? Like he was raised by a single mother. All his preschool and primary school teachers were all females. He never got to see a male authority figure until he was like 11, like a real consistent, stable role model in his life. So he's like, he'd already been conditioned into who he was in his belief system and his, his wiring. Like how is any of this objectively and foundationally, how is this foundationally my men's fault? Like it was all, but yeah, we were in society. Oh, God. Hardemus says, people want to have successful relationships when they don't even have a successful relationship with themselves. Exactly. You look at how you speak to yourself. And then sometimes it doesn't surprise me why a person has an outlook to women in the world and their nihilistic victimhood that they have. I'm not saying to be naively optimistic, ladies and gentlemen, but what kind of person do you instinctively avoid and you don't want to be around? They tend to be, your instincts tell you. Let's see what other comments people have left. As a child, I was optimistic, now pessimist. People are predictable. You realize this as you get hurt. True. But also you realize, have I been predictable too? Has my autopilot been predictably the same thing? I just run on autopilot, but I expect people to be lucidly present and listen to me. Am I listening to them and reacting to what I'm listening to and seeing? Or am I just kind of, you pull the cord on the wind-up doll and you let it, walk forward, and then everyone just treats you the way, are you on autopilot, but you expect everyone else to be kind of consciously present and treating you with velvet gloves like your mother used to, or you wanted to? You have to point it the same way. Like, if you expect a lot from other people, are you expecting a lot from yourself too? That has to be a reciprocal dance. You can't just be a 5-year-old expecting the world to take care of you. And also, you can't be that entitled either. It's very easy to point out other people who are entitled in relationships and they expect more than what they give. But often we expect much more than what we give too. Big Ol says, mental outlook and stress levels have a massive impact on life expectancy. Yes. Look for ways to minimize your fear. So if you're always reverting to safety and making excuses just to be safe, you're walking on eggshells trying to make your world irrationally perfect when it's not. It's especially out there. You can make it perfect in your own four walls. I understand why everyone has a natural impulse to make their worlds perfectly and mathematically safe in your own four walls. But you have to kind of go out there and shop and pay taxes and get some, vitamin D or something. People are touching grass less and less. And I think, we just need to be a bit more sensible. Less pessimistic, much more skeptical. Let's go back to some of these questions to this poll. Brad Strung Out says, actually, did I read the entirety? Now, thus I do more, and it turned out, well, let me read out Vanessa's Art's comment. I don't think I finished it. He said, optimism makes me feel good, and I'm more productive when I feel good. Thus, I do more, and in turn create more instances to feel good about myself. It's a feedback loop. It doesn't get any simpler than that. However, sometimes I'm prone to occasional pessimism rooted in learned helplessness and the fear of opening up to new opportunities. But this is very important. I'll read that again. Optimism makes me feel good, and I'm more productive when I feel good. Thus, I do more, and in turn, create more instances to feel good about myself. It's a feedback loop, and it doesn't get any simpler than that. I would like us to be realistically optimistic about things in that fashion, because denying what feels good and the motivation of what feels good that makes you motivated to do more and more, you don't get motivated by cold math. At least some of us, most of us don't, that aren't naturally wired to see the beauty in mathematics, right? But where everyone else lives is the gray area of feelings and what stimulates our feelings, what stimulates our oxytocin and serotonin. So you cannot discount what makes you feel good, because then you won't backtrack and actually look at the reasons why. Why does this chick on a date make me feel good? She feels different to the rest. Knowing why is really good. And this kind of lucid analysis that Vanessa made, I really think is important to keep an eye on. That natural feedback loop of being optimistic and seeing the results of it, and then it makes you more motivated to do it again and again and again. Cold hard math, for the vast majority of us, including me, is not motivational. It is a wall of finality. 1 + 1 = 2, and that's all it is. 2 is dispassionate. And so then why would I chase women? I don't care how I feel. I'm fighting my human nature, my impulses, my biology, and I refuse to articulate them in the way of trying to understand my feelings philosophically, what drives me, who I am, my introversion, my extroversion. I refuse. I'm going to calibrate the happiness of the feelings in my life and my drives and my motivation by cold, hard math. 1 + 1 = 2. That's all I need. And then you'll see yourself as a romantic lone wolf, right? Not needing anything. not needing any color in your life, no art, no nuance, no lively discussions that aren't memes. Like I love having discussions because invariably most sentences that come out of my mouth are an instantaneous word salad of things that I've learned from dictionaries and thesauruses and conversations and movies and thoughts, and it enriches my conversation with you and other people. I don't talk in memes. I might say things commonly every now and then. I have phrases I say like calibrate. I know I say that a lot, but it's a default word that I feel comfortable with. And after a while, if I keep using it, I'll change it. But man, the being able to articulate your instincts and your feelings and trying to and knowing how you can try and recreate them again and again and again to generate oxytocin and serotonin, like, you know, the life aspects out there. The math doesn't give you that. The math gives you safety. That's it. Certainty. But all these guys out there and girls who are nervous, afraid, and safety inclined, they don't make choices. The only choice you've made is to barricade yourself and lock the door and never experience color, never experience any degree of risk or unpredictability where you might be able to learn something more. All these people do is read the same books. Some of these scientifically inclined guys in the manosphere, that they read the same things over and over again to justify their biases. For me, they're no different to the religious extremist that reads the same book over and over and again and refuses to read, have conversations with, or anything outside of that little bubble, that Bible. They're doing the same thing. I am only calibrating my life, there's the word again, through a STEM-based Bible and outlook of life. That's it. I will not have a conversation with any other animal that is not that kind of person. And then I'll bitch about the world that is very varied out there. You're not living your world out there is not the university campus of the STEM subjects. That's not what the world is. When you go into university, you can have much more of that. You don't have to associate with other areas. But yeah, it's not your little social studies group. It's not your feminist studies group, the world out there. And you're an idiot if you keep getting annoyed that the world isn't your feminist studies degree that you're trying, your feminist study useless degree that you're trying to get, and you're trying to force the world to be that. Kylie says, what should I say? Pick one. There is too much uncertainty, too much wrong in the world to the point where we have no choice but to make a choice. Yes. Yes, there are no answers. There's a lot of very rational answers, guys. A lot of them. Which one you pick and run with will determine the quality of your life. So your outlook, your perspective, what you choose to lean towards, overly pessimistic or rationally optimistic, will generate predictable results. And the pessimistic person will look at someone who wants to be more optimistic like myself and say, well, he failed, ha, I'm right, he's wrong. Or if I succeed in a way that they never did because they weren't optimistic or didn't want to try, then they'll say, well, that's just luck. That's just a unicorn. That's too stochastic, or it's basically chance, or that's not measurable. Your blueprint isn't a blueprint. It's not. Life for me is largely an aesthetic experience, and for me to keep generating more great aesthetic experiences in life, I need to formalize routines and perspectives that will try and generate those. Your cold math Bible, your nihilistic cold math Bible will almost never generate a colorful world where you're content and happy and you learn more and you grow and you have great surprises and adventures that are in line with your thinking, because you have no ethics. You've locked yourself into a like a feedback loop of negativity and certainty. And your life is predictable and you love the safety. I applaud that you have much more predictable black and white safety than I do. But I made a choice with my life many years ago that I had a very predictable, safe black and white world, and I wanted much more color. And that is to recognize where you can have happier moments, where you can take calculated risks and things like that. So anyway, how much do you think life is just luck? I think the life is luck it's kind of, if you look at it as in terms of like moments, the initial moment is luck. Who you come across, what job advertisements you apply to, things like that. There are just moments where you don't have a plan and you're just going through life or searching online, and you, in a luck fashion, come across those things. And some people who are mathematically inclined say, well, it's not really luck because it's kind of like you're into this and you'll naturally, predictably pick this direction and go down this street and turn left, and you'll go down this street because you want to have a coffee, then you'll come across, I get it, right? You can mathematically try to make sense of things, but I think there's almost all luck at the initial moment of anything. But then after that, if you're attuned and self-aware enough, and you have a philosophical way through your life, or you're trying to as best you can, like I'm trying to do with these streams and my thinking and the way I conduct my life, past the luck moment at the start of anything is that you have the opportunity to make it not luck. You have the opportunity to choose or not choose the thing, to converse and relate to it or not to figure out what it is and if it's good for you or not. So yes, luck, if not complete luck at the start, but after that initial point is the discernment of your choice. So there's a lot of luck, but then what do you choose? How do you interpret or look at that thing and decide what it is? Do you have a blueprint from your Bible that says like everything that looks like that is that? I don't even have to interact with it. I'm so smart, I know it's that. You know, everything out there I know, to the degree that it's like I'm walking through the African savannah, and if it's a lion and I'm avoiding it. Whereas life in a civilized world here in the West is up for interpretation most of the time. Yes, on the surface, a good-looking chick is a good-looking chick, but to know if she's worth talking to or getting to know or go on the second date or commit to or have kids with or marry or whatever you want to do, that takes engagement. The discernment of your engagement with someone and you being in full control of your yeses and nos and seeing whether empirically you can relate. And if this thing is compatibly related to you is up to you. So luck at the start, almost no luck. So it's kind of a tipping point. All luck, no luck in the maintenance. So the maintenance of anything past that first point. She's a woman, she becomes Jane. It's not about luck. There's luck here and there if you take off your eyes off the steering wheel, if you don't talk, if you don't communicate, yeah, then luck comes to introduce itself. But there's no black and white answers. So there's the choice. But it's not just luck. That's kind of looking for a perfect answer where there is none. Personal solutions are not perfect. They can be compartmentalized into sections and a range, but they're not like the maths of 1 + 1 = 2. Don't you just love the mute button when you need to belch? That's a nice, civil way, old-fashioned way of saying burp, isn't it? One has to belong to the intelligentsia to believe things like that. No ordinary man could be such a fool. George Orwell in 1945. Yeah, I think I have a quote here by, who was it? Not Orwell, Theodore Roosevelt. He says, "The only man who never makes mistakes is the man who never does anything." Or who never changes. You know, I see so much of the world as like a toddler, a baby lying on its back with its arms, his little fat arms and legs in the air, sucking on a bottle. They're the kind of conversations I hear from all these victim woke people out there. You're always picking from two positives or two negatives, depending on the perspective. Please explain. Juvak Huspri, the paradox of great minds to seek solitude, but if you remain solitary, they succumb to madness. As Jung stated, his family kept him grounded in reality. It prevented madness. Yeah, I remember something that Tony Robbins once said about the human mind and nature's propensity to want opposing things as a balancing force. So we want certainty and uncertainty. The degree to which you want it is different for each person, but the human being does, without exception. You cannot want complete certainty. You go mad. Your life is dysfunctional. You don't socialize well. Just a whole bunch of other things, and that's regardless whether you're an introvert or extrovert. So the human brain sabotages itself, and we self-sabotage because the mind in our nature wants levels of certainty and uncertainty. And so we really need to have an honest conversation when we talk about these things. But a lot of these idiots online want to have absolute conversations about, no, I want absolute certainty. And then they lock the vault and live in that isolated world. And then you just keep pounding on that jail cell about how unfair the world is and if the world will only change, not realizing that they locked themselves in that vault. They threw away the key. Like and subscribe to the channel, people. Do the channel a favor if you like these conversations and videos. Also, I recommend. I posted a recent video on my channel. It was, where is it? Do I have the browser here? Here we do. This one here. This makes relationships possible. I posted this last night. I recommend you watch it. It talks a lot about this, thinking if your mindset is really, really beholden to the fact that everything is such hard work that the only way to get a favorable outcome is the impossible shot. Now, unless life is really easy, everything is too hard. I recommend you watch this. It's not a very long video. It's only just over 5 minutes, but it talks about a lot of the things that I've been mentioning in this stream. Tom Cook, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Oh, this is a good point. Christopher says, hello, human. There is a huge difference between optimistic and pessimistic. The first is a state of mind. The second is a discipline to be efficient. Yes. I can't remember who it was. Someone there tell me. Someone famous said that the sign of an educated mind is to be able to entertain a topic without accepting it. So in relation to optimism and pessimism, I would say the same thing. Being able to have that live and let live attitude, not being so offended by something that's not you, that you can't sharpen your opinion on it a little better. How do you recommend exiting dates with egotistical women? I've experienced anger and scorn when not automatically agreeing to go back to her house or meet again after the first date. It's their problem. I think the more you just keep your own self-respect and give your polite no's, and also push back and be impolite if they're being impolite. I'm not saying be a doormat if someone's being abusive to you mentally or physically, but who cares? You don't want to see them again anyway. I know it would be nice if people were polite. They used to be much more polite in our grandparents' generation, just generally. But now everyone has a license to express their dysfunction, and we all have to understand it, which we don't. Just exit the sites and be polite and walk out, and leave them screaming if they want to be, and let them make a fool of themselves. It's not your problem. And I think looking back also, although it's uncomfortable, it's actually good for you long term to experience those little moments of uncomfortable stress where you leave train wrecks, because you have much more long-term damage by trying to placate train wrecks and apologizing and trying to quell their anger and getting them to calm down. Let them be children or grow up. I don't know the answer to this, other than if you recognize, and you sound level-headed by how you write, Ikeban, I would keep doing what you're doing and just realize that you've got the higher ground in a civilized way, which our society needs desperately. We need much more civilized conduct between people. We need much more sane conversations. I was talking, I think, with Karu the other day, and I said, you know what? Like, I don't watch any manosphere content anymore. You know, all I listen to, I'm reading old books. I'm listening to like old interviews with Sam Harris, with Douglas Murray, audio books, things like that. It's just a dearth of sensible conversation. It's just all reality TV masquerading as intellect, and it's not. It's just a round table of couples at a barbecue bitching about their lives, and everyone's an idiot. It's almost like you went to a nightclub, turned off the music, and everyone's just getting around with microphones, like bitching at each other about the dating scene, with the music turned off at a nightclub. It's really weird. Any last comments, people, and we'll wrap this thing up. Thank you, Tom, for the super chat. I appreciate it. Any last super chats or comments before we wrap things up? Christopher says, psychologically speaking, you perceive distance as less distant and difficulty is less difficult if you are optimistic than pessimistic. It is scientifically measurable. This is true. I've heard this also about, you know, when you go on a trip, because of your impatience and you don't really know how long it's going to take to get there, and it's a little bit more immeasurable, like in terms of time and space. Coming back, the perception of time is very different. So sometimes, like, getting there is like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? But coming home tends to be quicker and less mental effort, as far as I remember. So yeah, there are psychological studies, and that kind of stuff, the way we perceive things, our attitude towards things, and realizing the reality of it, that's the conversations I want to have. Not just science, data, and all of those kind of things, and clever memes by people who weren't a discussion that you had. Big Hole says, we are just shampoo bottles in human shower, listening to him rant away at his demons. Bravo. That was a great comment. I'm pinning your comment, Big Hole. That was awesome. That was awesome. Jack says, I've come up recently with this interesting philosophical life quote. It is not that I do not like the people, I just do not like their lifestyle. Yes, and the psychology that comes from their lifestyle that they're beholden to and justifying, even if they're irritated at a lot of it. Yeah, it's like the longer and longer you're standing in shit, you can spray as much deodorizer over it and jump up and down on the shit to punish the shit. But unless you sort of realize where you're standing, you're not going to fix anything. Mecca says the real problem most men face today is that there's just too few good women, and most men don't get any females as they're after chads in their problem. Yeah. But like, with all respect, Mecca, I don't care. Not at your opinion, but I don't care about what most women are like. I frankly don't care, because I don't date most women. It is so hard to find someone compatible that I really don't care about the wailing and moaning of all these childish men and women trying to be alpha and trying to be high value men and women. Like, good luck. Be high value, empty cardboard cutouts. I really don't care. And you can be on podcasts with each other as empty as you are, bereft of any individuality and any kind of like individual, like light shining lexicon that comes out of your mouth, and your ability to be different because you're showing and expressing who you are. Good luck to you. Be high value. And then your woman or your man is attracted to the next empty, high value creature that they see out of the corner of their eye. But when you commit to the meaning behind the superficially attractive person, when you look for meaning behind the superficial, that's what you want to retain and stay with. Then it doesn't matter what someone looks like. It doesn't matter the advertising. It doesn't matter what McDonald's advertises in front of you. It doesn't matter how many great donuts are on the shelf at a supermarket. They might be beautiful. They're a painting in the museum, but I know where they belong. It doesn't matter. I see a Ferrari going past me on the road. I know my life. I know what it requires. I know what happens if I step into that domain. Do I want to live that lifestyle? Do I eat the donuts? Do you know what I mean? It's very different to date the world and be frustrated by the world and converse with the world. And it's very different to have a personal conversation. It's very different to try and love and have friends personally and rationally and sensibly and have that in real-time dialogue with you. I'm totally invested in these streams, these rants I'm having with you and reading your comments. When I get online with my friends on Discord, when I have conversations with people, yeah, I can go off on a rant, but I'm really like generating so much enthusiasm in the time and place I'm having with people and the things in my life. And from what I read on the comments and the spurgy, trolly comments in some comment sections, it's like you guys are trying to have personal relationships with abstractions out there that mean nothing, that don't care about you. Your words mean nothing. Your platitudes mean nothing. Your phrases and your memes are borrowed. You know, you'll say some very clever quote from Einstein or from Marcus Aurelius, and people go, wow, you remembered something from someone who was smart. But I'm not having a smart conversation. Like, you can't take Marcus Aurelius's comment and add to it or talk around it and try and have a more mature, hierarchically higher conversation at the level of Marcus Aurelius, or aim for him. Are you aiming for Marcus Aurelius, or are you pilfering a smart quote and passing it off as your own? Are you grabbing data from the extremes and passing it off as warning signs that this is the normal thing that's going to happen because we're all on autopilot and none of us can make real choices? I refuse to. I refuse to. Call me naive. I refuse to succumb to the terrain of what everyone says it is, especially when I know from day to day the way I speak and how I conduct myself, who my friends are, who I choose to spend time with. I know the choices I make. I am really in the shower today, aren't I? I am. Christopher says, I was pessimistic when I was young and started to be optimistic when I stopped to watch TV. Now I cherish my optimism because bad people do not have to win the battle. They are the bad guys. And when you say no to bad people in your private life, you become very optimistic about your private life because you're the bouncer at the door to your nightclub. It's like there are a lot of people wanting to get in, and if you just don't have a bouncer at the door and just kind of have an open door and a free meal for everyone, like, yeah, people are going to ruin your restaurant, your club, or whatever it is. But if you curate your life and you intentionally have some standards and some boundaries, then the quality of your life is better. You start complaining about less. Like, I refuse to go back to complaining as much as I used to. I told you, I find it really hard to make videos I care about and entertaining videos I care about, when like I don't just want to point out what's wrong all the time. I want to kind of relay conversations that are somehow solution or fairly kind of conversationally inclined. Like, this is what I think. What do you think? I could be wrong. You could, like, what do you think? Let's have a conversation. But trying to be right and proving everyone wrong, it's so easy to make videos about what you don't like and what's wrong. And, you know, it's just so easy. I could just close my eyes and throw a stone at it. A lot that I could make videos about, but it's very hard to make solution-based positive examples of having a more contented, balanced, more predictable life going forward, and sort of the conversation that generates. It's very hard, and it doesn't really get a lot of clicks or likes, or people don't want to turn up for it. But again, it's what you value more. If I'm more pessimistic, I will get more empty clicks, likes, have less friendships. I will always feel like I'm fighting the world. I'm never seeing the solutions to all of this stuff I talk about, and I know I never see the results of them implemented in a positive way in my life. What's the point of thinking I know all this stuff where it's always hopeless? It's always hopeless. I'm always in prison and there's no way out. And we're all prisoners trying to find a way out, but not really. We're just talking about how impossible it is to get out of this prison. Mecca says, for a heart that is hurt over and over again, I'm starting to realize why men walk away from women in society. I was self-sacrificing man trying to find happiness in her. Yeah, stop trying to find happiness in her and make it much more personal rather than the abstract. You put all your bets on women and men and relationship and all these these labels of what you hope it is to be, and make it much more about you and the other person and the feedback loop of dialogue and keeping that alive, rather than the label of what that could be or, you know, what it should be. The dialogue, conversation and communication is huge in terms of picking the right person, keeping it going, being honest about it. Conversation is huge because we can't read each other's minds without clear communication. Reading signs, all the dating advice online, reading all those signs and all that bullshit, I think it's a waste of time. It's kind of admitting how lazy you are. Any last questions, people? And let's wrap things up. David, longtime supporter, says, my perspective is what happens, happens. If it goes well, great. If not, I want to learn why and correct course for next time. I don't expect greatness from people, more like mediocrity. Yeah, just to expect the bare minimum. And if immediately you can't even get the bare minimum, you know what they are. But I think some people expect the worst, and then if they're surprised, they feel good. But then you don't feel good as often. You feel good less and less. And I'm not saying that's a way to be, but I'm saying if you're more sensibly, you have a baseline of optimism, like I at least expect the average person on the street not to be rude to me, to be even-handed and meet me halfway, especially if I'm conducting myself politely and civilly and maturely. And if they act like a 5-year-old, then I know, like, disengage. Me8751 says, I tell people I'm a realist, just so happens that reality is generally a negative experience. Fair enough. Let's see in the community tab. There are a few really good comments here that I wanted to. Okay. HLUCNA says, good question. If expectation minus reality equals disappointment. It's become a game of keeping expectations realistic, and in that, a larger degree of pessimism and lesser degree of optimism. I've never been a huge fan of unsubstantiated optimism. Me neither. I think unsubstantiated optimism is essentially delusional that can lead to being blindsided. I agree. I think a lot of guys who were taught to just be nice guys and be overly have that unsubstantiated nice guy optimism with strangers out there. That's where they get bitten in the arse. He ends, positivity and optimism are different things, but a fine line between the two. Well put. Alex Duda 7469 says, I'm a natural pessimist and I always expect the worst possible outcomes. The major downside to that is when I actually succeed at something I 100% expect I expect it to fail at, my attitude defaults to, I don't know, I never expected to make this far. Never expected to make it this far. No idea how to fix it. That is very important. That's a really good observation. If you expect the worst and you're surprised that the miracle of kind of a nominally good outcome happened, it's kind of like, well, whoa, that was surprising. I don't know how I got here. I guess that was a fluke. And like my recent video that I recommend you people watch on my channel, which is, where is it? It's, no, it's not there. Well, I recommend you watch it, which is, oh look, actually I'll go back. Watch this video here. This Makes Relationships Impossible, my latest video. Go to that video and I talk about this idea that you're so pessimistic that you think everything is a full court basketball shot, and the chances of you getting it in the hole, or to use a golf analogy, a hole in one. Like relationships and life is everything's a hole in one. There's no point unless you get a hole in one. There's no point in basketball unless you take that full court shot and it goes in. Otherwise, I'm not playing. Life is that hard. Otherwise, what's the point? Whereas, to use the basketball analogy, if you sort of say, well, I'm going to practice layups, or in golf, I'm going to practice my really close putting, that's a better attitude and more realistic one to have, because the more you practice that, that's the bread and butter, the basics. You get better and better at the harder and harder things. But if you just accept that life is luck, you have no skill in the thing, and it's just tossing the ball over your head, and if it goes in, that's the only way relationships are going to work. It's like, well, sucks to be you. But that is a very good point about Alex. He said, if you expect everything to fail and you're surprised that it works out, you have no apparatus by which to assess, like, how did this happen? This was luck, because I believe it's luck. Whereas if you have the intention of believing there's some sort of skill in you leaning in a positive direction in this thing, then when you get good results, you can go, aha, see, that I'm pretty sure it worked because I did this, this, and this. Or every time I did this and this, I get these better results more and more. You can learn lessons of how you can replicate and generate positive outcomes again and again. But if all you do is the closed-minded black and white of everything's hopeless, it's all luck, and if you get things going your way, you're like a 5-year-old getting pat on the head by your mum saying, oh, thank you. You are the chick that gets flowers and she doesn't know why other than she's a woman. Whereas if you get flowers as a woman and you know why you're treated well, you know why your partner respects you, you know why you know how you created your own luck, that is a more constructive way to be. That is a better way to generate your own luck, colloquially speaking. That is a much more optimistic way to be. It is how to generate things, not how to predict the future, but how to generate more predictable outcomes by how you conduct yourself beforehand, and your belief system, and what you will say yes and no to, and your discipline going into them, rather than no discipline, hands off the steering wheel. Yeah, I don't, DGBA says, it was a silly question, because, I am personally optimistic about my future. Am I supposed to be optimistic about the world? No, my questions are really always personal. I know the world is a mess. You can't really trust strangers without assessing them, but it's more about trusting yourself in the way you assess strangers and the world, and live your life through that. So it's more about personal. Of course, I wasn't saying blindly trust the world, have a naively, like, childlike optimism about the world. I'm saying learn to trust yourself in a mature way by the way you go about it, and talk to yourself better, and be more optimistic, realistically optimistic about the way you conduct yourself and the conversations you have and the boundaries you have, things like that. So I wasn't talking about being naively optimistic about the world and strangers and things like that. So anyway, let's wrap this up. In the next minute, I'm going to wrap the stream up. So any last super chats or questions, mark them below. Otherwise, like, subscribe. Thanks for showing up. Watch the latest video. Give it a like, comment, all that kind of good stuff. Keeps the channel's head above water, so to speak. Thank you for everyone who showed up today. I appreciate it. Someone wrote, I'm quite optimistic about my pessimism. Vero says, from my point of view, risks are predominant in the dating world. I don't want to participate just to get another notch on my bedpost. It goes against my values. Yeah, good point. Again, it's being aware of now what your standards are. I don't want just to get like a cheap short-term thrill that's a numbers game, and then afterwards I feel like I've just wasted my time and I haven't progressed. I don't want to be the same person I was yesterday. I don't like how I feel afterwards. There was one important thing someone said last week I was talking to. They said, I don't like the way I feel online dating. Like, having that realization of, like, I don't like how I feel. I don't like my life. I don't like this struggle. I don't like being with them. I don't like these conversations. I don't like being fat. I don't like not sleeping. I don't like, move forward instead of bitching about doing things the same way. So it's the first step is the realization of your own problem and pointing the finger at yourself and not outward all the time. Yeah, okay. Let's see. Any last super chats or questions? They said, meant to ask this last stream, but do you think that when men exit the dating market, 95% of the time it ends on a bad note? Can't think of many cases where I leave happy. I don't know. I know that there are a couple of times where I've left upset and kind of, figuratively speaking, flipped the table and given her my mind and like really told her everything in a very blunt and rude way, and it was over. But that was, I'd say, maybe 10 to 20% of my breakups. Most of the time it either fizzled out or like one or both of you kind of just get lazy and ghost and you don't do things the right way. It's very kind of a jumble. But leaving in a huff, I think it happened when I was most incompatible with someone, where I was struggling the most, and it reached a point where I just kind of blew up. More so than where they did less wrong, but I was doing everything mostly wrong, as in I kept my mouth shut and I basically lived in their romantic world, and they just got tired of me and me being so the times where I left in a half was when I was tired of trying and trying to make it work and being very vocal and direct about it, and there was just no way through, and the person was just stubborn, and we were stubbornly going in different ways. So I think it depends on the person and the personality. That's not an easy one to answer. Christopher says, luck is the outcome of opportunity and preparation. If we go to school, it is to learn to recognize patterns of opportunity and answer accordingly. Yes. Tom Cook, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for being a supporter of the channel. Mecca Medina says, to sum up your reply to my question and statement, are you saying men to just have standards and live for themselves and focus on self-improvement and the right one will show up in time? I'm saying largely focus on yourself in your own world and also your relational self. The fairness of that very sensible and fair feedback loop of listening, talking, being fair with another person, meeting them halfway. It's not always about you. Having a good dialogue, the voice in your own head. So it is largely focusing on yourself first, but also be objective and fair about the relational aspect you have with other people. It's not just, you're not just a dominant tyrant with people. You know, don't just be a solipsistic Andrew Tate and expect you can dominate everyone. You're not going to have favorable outcomes depending on your personality. I couldn't. If I was built more like Andrew Tate, where I didn't care so much about people and it was basically my solipsistic world or everyone else can F off. I do feel that way, but I'm a little more polite about things than he would be. But I don't generally disagree with his self-preservation and living life in a healthier way. Like, I don't generally disagree with him. Again, I've talked about this before. But yeah, focus on treating yourself better, making better decisions for yourself, but do not be solipsistic, especially if you're going to engage with the world. Be as healthy as you are with yourself, but in a secondary way, that healthy dialogue that you are with yourself, that self-respect, have that same respect with other people optimistically. But if they show they're not being fairly relational to you, then learn to have those boundaries, you know? Don't be a 5-year-old trusting other people. Be an adult. So. Vera says, when any good subjects doesn't come to mind, talk about the microphones. Yep. Well, for any of you who might be interested, again, I'm streaming through a Canon R6, streaming through the software's OBS. I'm using a Rodecaster Pro audio interface, and my microphone is a very boring yet awesome Lewitt 550DM dynamic microphone. I highly recommend this microphone. Sounds, I think it's really good on my voice. How do you differentiate between being an optimist and a fool? Yeah, your naivety. If you can justify your optimism in a fair discussion, like I'm trying to do, with which a lot of the guys in the comment section are trying to do as well, have this kind of really. Does the conversation sound like you're having a discussion around a table with people drinking wine, but not snobbish, not overly intellectual? Or do you feel like you're having a conversation with kids that are banging blocks and playing with Play-Doh? A bit of self-awareness as well. Tom, thank you for the super chat. He says, it is also a question of geography. It is much easier to trust a stranger in rural West Virginia than a random stranger in Melbourne. That is very true. It is easier to trust a stranger in rural Melbourne than it is to trust a stranger in London. Very true. See, these nuances are the conversation people don't want to have. These gray areas of where we live and who we are and the choices we make, and if we choose to live here as opposed to someone else, and how much easier our choices might be. If you're living somewhere in a big Western city where it's really harder, Why are you so beholden to the data and the stats to keep you safe? You should be fighting more for this, for the sanctity of your own little world and your yeses and your nos, and standing up for yourself and having a more confident disposition. And you need to be a better athlete in a big Western city. You can afford to be a lot lazier in a rural environment in the country where people it's not so claustrophobic, and people need to rely on each other and to be a bit more fair and things like that. Anyway, I take it there are no more super chats or questions. Let's wrap this up. Thank you for joining me today. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Saturday night for most of the US who are joining me on the stream. For my Melburnians and Australians on Sunday morning, and the rest of you somewhere in between in Europe and elsewhere. Thanks for showing up. Catch you in the next stream or video. If you have a microphone, jump on my Gilded server. I may be there to drop in, but I have a few things to do, but I might be there later. But my Gilded server is always open for any of you guys who want to get together and, you know, you're part of the chats here. Feel free to drop in. It's open 24/7. If you've got a microphone, and yeah, I'll catch you later in a stream or a video. Adios. Bye.